I get a lot of comments asking me for a tutorial on how I draw curls. And I swear, I have been wanting to make this video for a long time. It's just, I didn't really have a specific process for a while. I sort of just threw a bunch of things together and sort of, saw what looked good. But I feel like recently I've developed a system. And so I thought I'd come on here, record my process, talk y'all through it, because if I try to break this down, no one's gonna learn. Sorry, no one's gonna learn anything. So yeah, that's what we're doing today. Disclaimer: I see that light at the bottom of the screen. I see it. I didn't see it when I was recording. I see it now. All I can say is sorry. I can't re-record this video. If I re-record it, y'all will never actually, I'm not gonna re-record it. So, please bear with me for this one video. I swear this won't happen again. It's just, okay, so what we're gonna be doing is I'm gonna try to break my process into steps that I think are pretty easy to follow. I think this is a really straightforward, easy method that I've developed. The first thing that we're gonna start with is we're gonna draw the hair shape. So at this stage, I typically draw really loose curly lines based on the part of the hair I'm either imagining or referencing. Now, when I say part, I mean the actual parting of the hair. Let me explain. So let's say hair can only be parted 3 ways. That's not the case, but let's just say that. We have the middle part and 2 side parts. The hair will naturally go outwards from the part, and the curlier it is, the more likely it is to not fall, but instead go straight out, particularly the strands and chunks on the top of the head. So with this in mind, I basically just go in and draw the curls in chunks. I don't have a specific system outside of what I just mentioned for how I do this. The basic idea is to just draw until it looks good. Yeah. Grade A tutorial right here, guys. Okay, I'm just playing. Not really. What you could do though is go on Pinterest to have an idea of what the hairstyle is you're going for. A lot of my favorite hairstyles I draw are from Pinterest. So yeah. Sketch done. Next, line art. So I try to be really messy with my line art. I think it gives a more natural vibe, and ultimately the cleanliness of my line art doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. You'll see what I mean in a second. But I do have a few notes on the lines that I draw at this stage. First, I like to have a variety of lines / shapes that I use when drawing the hair, and this is because each different line adds volume in a different way. To illustrate this, I'm basically drawing out this really terribly done chunk of curls and showing how different shapes can give a different effect of like an outward curl, an inward curl, a downward curl, etc. I think my general mindset with curls is to just make them look big and floofy. And to do that, you have to be loose, have to try to bring a level of dynamism to your drawing process. And yeah, I think a line art just can't be too cleanly done and can follow too much of a pattern if you want to achieve that effect. believe it or not, I do actually have a few things to say for this stage of the hair process. And the first thing is, I do not use the fill tool. I go in and basically draw the edges before filling in between. The reason I do this is I like to overline the edges of my line art to ensure that the curls follow a specific shape that I like, or the specific shape that I want. Because what happens when I do line art sometimes is, try it hard as I may, I don't end up with a shape that looks good to me. It typically ends up looking a bit unnatural, like here. And so I overline, and then I fill, and then I overline again, and one more time. Pinterest is your best friend if you need a reference for shape and or form. Quick note if you're drawing from memory though. A good thing I try to focus on is maintaining a sort of circular shape for the curls. Naturally, the part with more hair will be where the circle skews more towards, but that's a good thing to take note of. And once I'm happy with the shape, I go over the line art once more to outline. It looks a bit messy, but it's fine because the line art doesn't really matter like that. Okay, so this is where the real fun begins. We're gonna get into the rendering phase of this drawing, and the first thing we're gonna do is shade. For this, I try to pick a color that is darker, more saturated, and more of like a red hue than the base color. But all of these are only meant to be very slight changes, because later on what I do is I then put this on a multiply layer. Yeah, I'm generally really loose with the shading, but it's fine because afterwards I take an eraser on a low pixel size and I start to sort of clean up, making sure to draw out the shapes of the curls and the chunks, sort of define them, and begin to sort of establish some depth with the hair. Another thing I usually do around this point is I change the color of the line art. For this, I typically use a color that's also darker, slightly more saturated, and redder than the base. So I guess you could use the shading color for this. Then I duplicate the layer, take the duplicated layer and blur it to about 2 to 3%. And yeah, that's it. Next step. I take a lighter, less saturated and yellower color, and with a large brush size on low opacity, I just do a light pass over the parts of the hair I think will be protruding. I guess you could call that like a pre-highlight. Anyways, highlights. Here I try to go even lighter, less saturated, and more yellow than the last stage. And I just start to draw a bunch of curls, and these go over the line art, so we're no longer working beneath it. That's why I kept saying the line art doesn't really matter. Yeah, just try to be aware of where the light's coming from. I try to make sure the areas that are the most dense with curls are the ones closest to the light source, and then as we get closer to the bottom, the more sparse it is, and the more I sort of leave mainly shadows / the base color to show. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Does any of this make sense? Anyways, yeah, that's kind of all I have to say for this stage. and on to the next stage. We're almost done, y'all. Okay, so at this stage, I try to add more definition to the highlights and the shadows. So for the highlights, once again, lighter, less saturated, yellower. I go over the strands that are the closest to the light source and just define them, draw over them with curly lines. And then I do basically the opposite for the shadows. Same thing, redder, darker, more saturated. And just make sure to be aware of the light source and try to use these new curls to both deepen the pre-established shadows and sort of carve out new individual strands. And yeah, that's it. I don't know if this made sense. I hope someone left this sort of knowing how to draw curls. I know I didn't. I feel like I've never been more confused about what exactly it is I do when I draw, but I tried my best. If this helped any of y'all out, I'd love to know. And I will see you next time with hopefully a better and clearer explanation. I mean, I hope this was clear enough. I really do hope someone learned something from this. I can't tell. But yeah, let me know. And don't forget to subscribe. Bye-bye.